A very warm welcome to all my dear children for the today's class. I am Nirmala from Bharathidhasanar Matric Higher Secondary School, Arakkonam, going to make you understand about your next concept in your 8th standard. So, in your 8th standard, your biology, right? So, your biology subject. In your biology subject, your next lesson is about ecosystems. So, your third lesson is about ecosystem. So, from your 8th standard, your lesson 3 is about ecosystem. Now, what is this ecosystem? So, maybe in your lower sections, you might be come across a word called habitat, right? So, habitat is a place where animals or the plants, they live naturally, right? But it refers to a place. But ecosystem, what is ecosystem? So, ecosystem are all the living organisms, for example, plants, animals, microorganisms and human beings, they interact with other, for example, with the physical environment, physical surrounding, right? So, they interact with the physical surroundings that form a ecosystem, right? So, when the living organisms interact with the non-living organisms, non-living things, not organisms. So, non-living things, non-living physical surroundings that form a system called ecosystem. So, this ecosystem is also called as ecological system. So, ecological system. So, first we will write the definition of the ecosystem. So, what is ecosystem? So, ecosystem is a interacting system in which living organisms interact with the non-living physical environment, right? So, that is known as ecosystem. So, first we will write what is ecosystem. So, ecosystem means an interacting system and interacting system in which living organisms like plants, animals, human beings, microorganisms, right? So, these are all the living organisms. So, in which living organisms interact with the non-living physical environment. So, organisms interact. So, interact means ஒன்னோடு ஒன்று டிபெண்டாக இருக்கிறது, ஒன்னோடு ஒன்று வந்து பரிட்சமாக இருக்கிறது, சரியா? So, interact with the non-living physical environment, environment. So, non-living physical environment, right? So, this form a ecosystem. So, this ecosystem is also called as ecological system, right? And this ecosystem is a word that is derived, that is coined by a British scientist. So, his name is A.G. Tansley, T-A-N-S-L-E-Y. So, Tansley in the year 1935. So, in the year 1935, a British scientist coined the word ecosystem. So, ecosystem means it is a place where the living organisms and the non-living non-living things interact with each other, right? So, they are dependent on each other, right? So, that form a system called ecosystem. Now, let us see the next one, biosphere. So what is biosphere? So bio means it refers to life. So bio means it refers to life, and sphere it refers to the earth, right? So any part of the earth that in which life exists is called as biosphere. So biosphere means the part of earth where life exists. So bio means life. So bio means life. So biosphere means any part of the earth where life exists. So that is known as biosphere, right? Now this part of the earth that can be operated in 3 different states, right? So this can be in 3 different states. So one is, it can be on the land. So the ecosystem can be in the 3 different, it can be operated in the 3 different places. So it can be on the land, or it can be on the water, right, and or it can be on the air, right. So there are 3 components, there are 3 components in the biosphere, right. So this land, it can be also called as lithosphere, Lithosphere. So lithosphere. So the land is also called as lithosphere, and water is also called as hydrosphere. Hydro refers to water. So hydro means water. So in your biology, you have for each and every term, it has a separate meaning, right. So hydro refers to water, litho refers to land, and air. So air is also known as, also can be called as atmosphere. So atmosphere. So this biosphere, the biosphere has 3 components, abiotic components. So those are known as lithosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere. So lithosphere refers to land, hydrosphere refers to water, and atmosphere refers to air. So now this biosphere, it extends from the bottom of the ocean till the upper atmosphere. So in the biosphere வந்து எது வரைக்கும் எக்ஸ்டெண்ட் ஆயிருக்குன்னா, நம்ம ஓஷன், நம்ம கடல் இருக்கு இல்லையா, கடலுக்கு அடியில் பாட்டம் இருக்கு இல்லையா, ஸோ அந்த பாட்டத்தில் இருந்து மேலே இருக்கிற அட்மாஸ்பியர், அப்பர் பார்ட் ஆஃப் த அட்மாஸ்பியர் வரைக்கும் என்ன இருக்கும், that comprises, that place completely, it is called as biosphere. So from the bottom of the ocean, from the bottom of the ocean till it goes up to the upper part of the atmosphere. So upper atmosphere, right. So that extension of this place is known as biosphere, right. So now let's see what are the types of ecosystem. So now let's see what are the types of ecosystem. So now we already told ecosystem is a place where we can see living things as well as non-living things, and they are dependent on each other, they interact with each other, right. So this ecosystem, it can be classified in 2 types. So one is it can be classified into 2 types. One form of ecosystem is known as natural ecosystem. Natural ecosystem. The other form of ecosystem is known as artificial ecosystem, or it can be a man-made ecosystem, right. So artificial ecosystem, right. So it can be made by, it is managed, it is developed by the man. So that is why it is called as artificial ecosystem and natural ecosystem. Further, this natural ecosystem can be divided into 2 types. So they can be on the land or on the water. So on the land, it can be called as terrestrial, T-E-R-R-E-S, terrestrial. So which is on the land, and the next one is aquatic. Aquatic, aqua refers to water. So aquatic means on the water. So we can see natural ecosystem on the land or on the water, right. So this aquatic ecosystem is even more further classified into two types. So one is lentic, can be called as lentic. The other one is called as lotic, L-O-T-I-C, lotic and lentic. So now what is this lentic and lotic? So lentic, aquatic means we all know that water, right. So this water can be classified into two types. So one is a set of water which is stagnated in one place. ஒரே இடத்துல தேங்கி இருக்கிற அந்த water placer வந்து என்னன்னு சொல்வாங்க? Lentic. Lentic means stagnation of water in one particular place. So what are the examples? It can be lake or pond. ஏரி, குளம் சொல்வாங்க இல்லையா. ஸோ அந்த இடத்துல பார்த்தீங்கன்னா தண்ணி எப்படி இருக்கும்? ஒரே இடத்துல இருக்கும், சரியா, வேற எங்கேயும் மூவ் ஆகாது. ஸோ தட் பிளேஸ் இஸ் கால்ட் as lentic. So pond and lake, so are the examples of lentic ecosystem. And lotic ecosystem, what are the examples of lotic ecosystem? Means the place where the water will be flowing. So அந்த இடம் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா அந்த இடத்துல வாட்டர் வந்து எப்படி இருக்குமா, ஸ்டாக்னேட் ஆயிருக்காது, அது எப்படி இருக்கும், ஃப்ளோ ஆகிட்டே இருக்கும். எக்ஸாம்பிள் ரிவர், ocean, right. So river, ocean are the example of lotic ecosystem, river and ocean, right. So and let's see what are the examples of the terrestrial ecosystem. So terrestrial ecosystem examples on the land, right. So it can be a desert, grassland, or it can be a fully it can be any place, a forest also. So forest, and then grassland, desert. So these are all the example of places of a terrestrial ecosystem. And what are the examples of the artificial ecosystem? So it is designed by man, it is made by man, and it is not occurring naturally. Natural ஆக இருக்காது, சரியா. ஸோ அதை வந்து மனுஷன் வந்து செட் பண்ணியிருப்பாங்க, சரியா. எக்ஸாம்பிள், it can be a crop land, வயல்வெளின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க இல்லையா. ஸோ crop land, garden, park and aquarium, right. So these are the cropland, garden, park and aquarium. These are the examples of the artificial ecosystem. We saw the different types of ecosystem, right. So this ecosystem, all the ecosystem, they depend on energy, right. So the energy flow should be there. So all the ecosystem, they depend on the energy. So they take the sun, they take the energy from the sun, and they this energy is absorbed, or they are taken by the green plants, right. So from the sun, from the sunlight, the plants absorb the sunlight, right. So without the energy, the ecosystem will not function. So in any ecosystem, it can be on a land or water, or it can be on the air. So the ecosystem depend on the energy from the sun. So it takes the sun as a source of energy, right. So from the sun, the energy is derived and they are absorbed by the green plants, and from the green plants the energy is passed into the heterotrophic organisms, or from the plants the animals take the energy, right. So without the energy, no ecosystem will not function, does not function properly. So all the ecosystem need some energy to work, right. So that is why energy is very, very important for all the ecosystem, and the major source that the ecosystem using as energy is sun. So the sunlight, from the sunlight the energy is given to the plants, and from the plants the animals take up the energy. Likewise the energy will be keeps on flowing, right. So now let's see the examples of the artificial ecosystem. So the example of the artificial ecosystem. First one we will see about garden. So garden is a example of artificial ecosystem where the man designed or developed this kind of ecosystem. So here we can see many animals, many plants, they interact with each other that form the garden ecosystem. The next one is cropland. So cropland means vayalveligal. So even in the cropland we can see many animals or microorganisms, they interact with the non-living physical things. So we can see soil, air, it depends upon the places. So they interact with each other. So cropland is also an example of artificial ecosystem. So next one. So the next one is aquarium. So aquarium is a place which is designed or developed by the man, right? So it is not occurring naturally. So man has developed that kind of an aquarium where we can see many aquatic organisms, aquatic living things, they interact with the non-living things. For example, it can be a stone or it can be soil or it can be water, air. So these are all things that they interact with between each other. So that form a aquarium ecosystem, right? So these are all the examples of artificial ecosystem. Now let's see about the natural ecosystem. So the first one we are going to see about desert. So desert is an example of a natural ecosystem. So where we can see naturally the desert is present, right? It is a dry land, and also we can see many organisms, plants and animals live in that desert, right? So we can see some plants like cactus, so they live in the desert, and from that plants the animals get the energy, right? So these living things and the non-living physical things interact with each other. So this is an example of desert ecosystem. And the next one, this one is grassland ecosystem. So even in the grassland we can see many animals and plants live, right? So they interact with each other. So one is dependent on the other. The grass is dependent on the animals, right? So the grass is dependent on the air and water to grow, right? And the same way some animals eat the grass, so thereby the animals get the derive the energy from the plants. So grassland is also an example of natural ecosystem. And the next one, forest. So forest is also a example of natural ecosystem. So we can see many trees, many plants grow in the forest, and they interact with the animals, or they interact with the non-living things like air, water and land. So thereby it forms an ecosystem. So this is an example of forest ecosystem, right? So we can see many animals live in the forest. So without the food, the animals cannot able to survive, right? So the place where the animals or the plants get the energy, so that place that they interact with each other, so that scene is known as ecosystem. Now let's see about the aquatic ecosystem. So now these things are called as terrestrial ecosystem. The next one is aquatic ecosystem. So aquatic ecosystem, it refers to fresh water. It can be a fresh water or it can be a pond also, right? Lake also. So here we are going to see about the lotic. Lotic means flowing water, right? So it can be a river or it can be ocean. So here also we can see many animals and plants, they interact with each other and they form an ecosystem. This is an example of aquatic ecosystem, and particularly it is a lotic ecosystem. And the next one is lentic ecosystem. Lentic ecosystem means the place where the water will not be flowing, it will be stagnated in one place. ஒரே இடத்துல அப்படியே தேங்கி இருக்கிற அந்த இடத்தை நம்ம என்னன்னு சொல்வோம், lentic ecosystem. So example, lakes and pond, right? So even in the lakes and ponds, many animals and many non-living things, they interact with each other, right? So this forms an ecosystem that is known as pond ecosystem, and this is a lake ecosystem, right? So almost you learnt about the types of the ecosystem, right. So, there are two types, natural and artificial. Under natural we saw terrestrial and aquatic, under terrestrial we saw about lentic and lotic, right. So, next we are going to see the components of the ecosystem. So, the components of the ecosystem can be of two types. So, it can be said as abiotic and the other one is biotic. What is abiotic? So, abiotic is nothing but the non-living physical things. So, it can be organic substances and it can be inorganic substances, or it can be climatic factors. So, climatic factors. So, what is organic compounds? What is organic substance means? It can be carbohydrates, proteins, fats, so vitamins, minerals. So, these are the organic compounds that comes under abiotic. And inorganic substances. Inorganic substances like carbon dioxide, oxygen. So, these all come under inorganic abiotic components. And climatic factors, it can be air, soil, or it can be due to temperature, due to humidity, wind, water. So, those things come under climatic factor. The next one that we are going to see is about biotic ecosystem. So, biotic refers to all the living organisms. Living organism. So, what are the living organisms? So, it can be plants, animals, or birds, or microorganisms, or of course human being. So, even our human being is also an ecosystem where some microorganisms live in our body, right. So, it may be beneficial to us. So, even our body is also called as an ecosystem. So, ecosystem is a place where the living and the non-living will interact with each other, right. So, this is what you have learnt in this class. So, we will just see what you have learnt. So, you learnt about the definition of the ecosystem. First thing you learnt about the definition of the ecosystem. So, definition of ecosystem. So, this one you learnt, right. And the next thing that you learnt is about biosphere. So, what is biosphere? So, in that biosphere we learnt about lithosphere, hydrosphere and atmosphere, right. So, this is what you have learnt, and also you learnt the types of the ecosystem. So, what are the types of the ecosystem, and also you learnt the components of the ecosystem. So, the components, it can be two types, abiotic and biotic. Biotic refers to living organisms, abiotic refers to non-living physical things, like it can be a wind, water, soil, temperature, humidity and carbohydrates, proteins, all the non-living physical things. So, those come under abiotic, right. So, this is what you have learned. So, just we will revise what you have understood so far. So, just we will answer the question. So, an aquarium is a dash. So, aquarium is a dash ecosystem, whether it is a natural or a artificial. So, it is a natural, right, artificial, right. So, it is not a natural, it is a artificial ecosystem. Primary source of energy in an ecosystem is sunlight, right. So, from the sunlight the ecosystem will get the primary energy. So, that energy is passed to the plants and the animals. Two major components of ecosystem. What are the two major components of ecosystem? So, first one abiotic, and then next one biotic, right. So, the region of the earth where life exists. So, when there is a life, that is life I refers to bio, right. So, the region of earth where life exists, that is known as biosphere, B-I-O-S-P-H-E-R-E. So, biosphere is a part of earth where life exists. Stagnant water ecosystem is also called as, so that stagnation of water, that is known as lentic, L-E-N-T-I-C. Flowing water ecosystem is known as lotic, L-O-T-I-C, lotic, right. An example of natural ecosystem. So, natural ecosystem example, it can be grassland, forest, or it can be desert, right? And three abiotic components of biosphere. So what are the three abiotic components of the biosphere? Hydrosphere, is hydrosphere, lithosphere and atmosphere. These are the three abiotic components of the biosphere, right? So this is what you have learned in this class. So almost with this your session is over. So in this part you learned about the definition of the ecosystem and what is biosphere, and also you learned the different types of the ecosystem, right? So it can be a natural or it can be a artificial, right? And also you learned what term is referred to stagnation water and flowing water, lentic and lotic also, and you learned about the components of the ecosystem in this class, right? So after you watch the video, go through the book and take the definition and try to write it in your note and read it and do a self test, right? So after you watch the video, below in the description link you can find the Google Drive link. So just click it, you will get the subject related question bank, self assessment and the study material. Take the study material and copy the study material notes in your biology subject note, right? And read the notes from that note and do the self assessment, because by doing the self assessment you will come to know how far you have understood about the concept, right? So I hope you are all very happy to listen to the class. So thank you for watching and have a good day.